What if I told you that GTA 4's episodes from Liberty City wasn't the first time Rockstar made DLCs for a mainline entry game? In fact, DLCs for this franchise have been around since the very first installment. Featuring a real-life location and a time period that would never be seen again in the series, a wide range of protagonists to choose from, and some wildly controversial sense of humor. I honestly don't know what the developers were thinking when they wrote this. A few months prior to the release of GTA 2, Rockstar published 2 mission packs for GTA 1 that would expand the game with new content. But instead of taking place in the same 3 locations the first game featured, which were the usual trio of Liberty City, San Andreas, and Vice City, it had a completely new setting, one that alongside GTA 2's Anywhere City would never be seen again in the 3D or HD universes. First was London 1969. Insert haha funny number joke here, that takes place in London 1969, obviously. It was released for the PC and the PlayStation, making it the first ever DLC to be released on the PlayStation 1. That's pretty nice. Second came London 1961, this time a PC exclusive mission pack that serves as a prequel to the events of the first expansion. These games were developed by former Rockstar Canada, now known as Rockstar Toronto, which is a bit ironic if you think about it. In an interview with Vice, a couple of developers that had worked on these expansions talked about the process and the research they had to do beforehand to get a real grasp of the location and time period they were trying to capture. One such way was by watching British movies from that exact era, like The Italian Job, coincidentally released in 1969, as well as accurately representing the slang, which I couldn't tell if it's accurate or not. I can hardly understand a lot of what's said in the missions.
Listen, right, we're looking for a lad who can do his stuff. I've heard you're a bit tasty, no messing around or you get a slap. Remember, I'm the monkey and you're the cheese grater, so no messing around.
Then came the actual development of the games, which was a lot easier than making a whole new installment. Most of the work was already done in GTA 1, so it was a matter of importing a lot of the assets, retexturing some of them, making improvements, and just focusing on the actual parodying of London more than anything. Oh, and obviously changing the driving mechanics a bit so it's all done on the wrong side of the road. Something you'll most likely have to adjust your mind to. Most of the driving footage playing in the background has me crashing and bumping into traffic every 5 seconds. Although not a one-to-one replica, obviously, the map of London is represented fairly accurate, and it even features some real-life landmarks like the Buckingham Palace or the Big Ben. This would go on to become the first time Rockstar picked a real setting instead of a parody one, like naming the city Los Santos instead of Los Angeles. It would also be the only non-American GTA location featured in a game, and it still is to this day. Maybe in the future we could either revisit London or something that was never done before. Besides the real-life location and landmarks, the game's colorful yet trashy environment does a good job of encapsulating the architectural design of 1960s London. You can even spot seagulls or pigeons, I'm not really sure what they are, both in parks and on rooftops. Gigantic cracks in the roads, lots of random garbage in the alleyways, and even animal waste on just about every street. If you happen to use your handbrake over it, the skid marks would actually be brown. It might just be me, but I think that's a pretty cool detail to add in. Without a doubt, The Lost and Damned and The Ballad of Gay Tony are amazing expansions for GTA 4 that added extra content, expanded the lore, and had drastically different vibes. I also have to mention RDR's Undead Nightmare, an amazing Wild West turned zombie apocalypse scenario that follows John's adventure as he tries to fight off the undead and figure out the source of the plague. They have been very well received by both critics and the public, and that is the reason why a lot of people were disappointed to find out Rockstar had abandoned the long list of potential GTA 5 single-player DLCs. After all, the demand for additional content in both single-player and online games is only growing year by year. But are these 2 expansion packs for GTA 1 any good? Let's start with the public reception of them. They were initially met with mixed reviews from critics at the time, some praising the game for what it offered and the way it presented itself, as well as inserting subtle ways to poke fun at the culture. After all, Rockstar was originally a small team of British developers, so this was a way to laugh at themselves a bit if anything. Other critics felt like the game didn't really improve on the original, and despite the actual expansions being good, they didn't rate it all that high due to lack of innovations. And some saying that having only one location as opposed to GTA 1's 3 main cities felt like a step backwards, but I don't really see it that way. And of course, there were complaints about the clunky controls that were more or less the same from the original, and a poor mission design at times that would be infuriatingly hard for absolutely no reason, especially in the 1961 expansion. That one I could totally understand. When it comes to sales, I couldn't really find much information from reliable sources, but I did find in a few places that the game reportedly sold only 110,000 copies, which, if true, would make it the absolute lowest selling Grand Theft Auto release, even lower than Advance, which sold almost 250,000 copies. Regardless of that, let's take a look at the actual gameplay and the story the game has to offer. The progression system is very similar to what the previous and following game had in place. Either complete missions and immerse yourself in the game world and earn enough money to get to the next chapter, or simply ignore everything and set up a massive chain explosion with enough cars so that you get the same amount of money required. Pretty much a staple of the 2D GTA speedruns. Well, except for GTA 2. That one requires other methods that are even more mind-blowing, pun intended. If you combine the two speedruns for each of the expansions, you could technically finish the games in less than 10 minutes. Do with that as you will. If you happen to choose the former method of progression that I've mentioned, you'll be met with a total of 43 missions for the 1969 expansion and only 7 for 1961, a very drastic difference. But it compensates with them being longer, on a timer, and generally very difficult as stated before. I'm not exactly sure who thought that would be a good idea. Though a difficult game, as a fun fact, London 1961 is the first ever game in the GTA franchise to feature drive-by shooting mechanics, something that would reappear and become the norm with GTA 3. Both games can be insanely difficult at times, especially since cops seem to just one-tap you into getting busted, and the shooting mechanics don't really help you all that much in defending yourself from them. I've mentioned the game having a story, and it sort of does, though I wasn't very interested in it. You basically do jobs for gang lords and other important figures like government agents and even the Queen, all in the pursuit of making money and eventually taking over London and becoming the big boss. Not very different from the usual GTA plot we always get. In addition, the games have a new set of vehicles different from the original. They are meant to represent actual British counterparts, but they all have funny names like Bent Over or James Bond. And we even have a tank named the Royal Pain. Now that is a great name for a tank. The weapon selection, however, is unfortunately just as limited as it is in the first game, with only 4 of them besides your fists, those being a pistol, a machine gun, a flamethrower, and a rocket launcher. Despite the limited range of firearms you get to choose from, you can still wreak havoc in the streets of London and have a fun time. Kill frenzies, or rampages as we know them nowadays, also make a return, though if you happen to fail them you cannot try for a second time and they're gone forever. What a shame. The checklist for 100% isn't all that big. In addition to the main story missions, you only have to discover all the frenzies on the map. You don't even have to complete them, thus also making the 100% speedrun categories for the games relatively short when compared to other GTAs. The soundtrack really brings a unique vibe and it sets the tone and atmosphere just right, truly making you feel like you're in the 60s. There are a total of 10 radio stations the game cycles through when you're in a car, with 3 primary genres, those being reggae, psychedelia, and jazz. And of course, between the songs playing, there are gonna be a few news interruptions that talk about the chaos and crime that happens in the city. So, after what probably felt like eons of rambling, are these 2 DLCs any good? And do they compare to something like episodes from Liberty City? Obviously not, but despite not improving all that much upon the base game, and even offering less content, I think these 2 expansions deserve to be played at least once to experience them and to explore what a British GTA would look like. Hopefully Rockstar revisits this in a spin-off game sometime in the future. Overall, I think the time spent playing these games and making this video was totally worth it, and I encourage you to give them a chance as well, especially if you liked GTA 1 and happen to never try these expansions. If you enjoyed this video, click on the screen to check out something similar, leave a like and comment down below your thoughts, and consider subscribing if you want to see more. Thank you so much for watching.
Arch is off to Devon, and I'm leaving the country. Heading for Thailand, actually. Very posh.